Here are our biggest questions for Loki Season 2. The God of Mischief's debut Disney Plus series has come to an end for now, but thankfully, as confirmed in the season finale, Loki will return in Season 2. And while the prospect of more Hiddles McGriddles gallivanting about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is always great news for us, we're still reeling from the events of the finale and the implications that that has for the future of the MCU as we know it. Now, we've already discussed what happened in the Loki finale and how that could affect upcoming MCU movies and Disney Plus shows, but today we're going to put our top TVA analysts to work to break down the biggest questions and theories that we have about Loki's eventual second season. Now, if you prefer to read all about it, Michael Walsh has you covered over on Nerdist.com, and I'll link to that in the description below. But obviously, to talk about this in detail, we need to spoil what happens, especially in the finale, but also all of Loki Season 1. So if you're not caught up yet, make like Loki himself and find the nearest exit. Okay, let's get into it, shall we? Now, before we dive into our questions, let's recap a couple of quick things about the finale. Loki and Sylvie discovered the time variance authorities controlled by He Who Remains, a variant of Kang the Conqueror played by Jonathan Majors. He Who Remains offered our heroes a choice: take over the TVA for him and preserve the sacred timeline, or kill him and incur multiversal war at the hands of a Kang-lection of Kang variants who all want to conquer all of time and space for themselves. Now, Sylvie woke up and chose violence. She murdered Kang, which then created the multiverse as he told her it would, including a new branch reality for Loki where he's back at the TVA, but no one knows who he is.
What?
And to make matters worse, the Timekeeper statue's been replaced by one of Kang the Conqueror instead. Okay. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about the episode's ending. Loki's horrified realization the TVA he's back in is in another timeline, one ruled by Kang the Conqueror rather than by a trio of animatronic space lizards. So which timeline is Loki in? Well, this is clearly one where a variant of Kang the Conqueror triumphed in the multiversal war, but rather than try to obfuscate his identity with artifice and skullduggery, he prefers a more dictatorial approach. Although the TVA still exists in this timeline, it appears that either the God of Mischief does not, or that their version of Loki is very different because neither Mobius nor B-15 recognize L1130.
What?
Now, the other twist is that this version of the TVA seems potentially more militant. Not only do we see Minutemen and Hunters rushing to the armory and gearing up for battle, but the characters we've met previously, like Casey, a lovable clerk who's never heard of fish, he's now a hunter rather than just an administrative employee. But it makes sense if you think about it. The new head of the TVA isn't Kang the Comptroller, he's Kang the Conqueror, and to conquer, you need soldiers. Alright, next question. Is the MCU itself in a time loop? Now, this is a fascinating conundrum. In the finale, He Who Remains seems awfully confident that no matter what happens, he'll wind up exactly back where he started.
Reincarnation, baby.
So basically, this is a version of Kang who eliminates all other variant versions of himself and manipulates the time stream to ensure that no matter what, all Kangs eventually become him. Usually in the comics, it's a character called Immortus, but seemingly here, it's He Who Remains instead. He is so confident in his plan that his final words are a chilling "see you soon" before he shuffles off this mortal coil. That's why He Who Remains was always He Who Explains. Speaking of Kang variants though, was that really Kang the Conqueror? Well, like most comic book stories out there, the answer is complicated. In a way, yes, it is, but more accurately, it's a variant of Nathaniel Richards, the 31st century scholar who becomes the time-traveling tyrant known as Kang the Conqueror. Now, there are countless variants of Nathaniel Richards and Kang across the multiverse, like Immortus, Mr. Griffin, Rama Tut, Scarlet Centaurian, Victor Timely, the list goes on and on. Case in point, they had enough to hold their own parliamentary hearings at one point in the comics, the Council of Cross-Time Kangs. And while He Who Remains is not a Kang variant in the comics, he absolutely is one on the show. And although he managed to Kang the conquer all the other Kang variants out there, He Who Remains no longer has any worlds left to conquer. Instead, he sits around munching on apples and planning a sweet reveal for whatever Loki might finally make their way to the Citadel at the end of time to finally see him. So the answer to this is both yes and no, but we actually have a deeper theory about He Who Remains and his real identity that will roll out in the days ahead, so see you soon. As for when we'll see Kang next, the answer is 100% confirmed. He will be in 2023's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We know that will feature Kang and presumably many of his multiversal variants as that film's main antagonist. Now, with that said, I wouldn't be surprised to see him pop up a la Thanos in the end credits of other projects like Eternals or Spider-Man No Way Home or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But who knows? Technically, he could be anywhere and everywhere for all time, always, all over the multiverse. But let's move away from Kang for just a moment to ponder what will happen to Sylvie in season 2. After stabbing He Who Remains, she was in pains, dropping to the floor because she was overcome with finally having fulfilled her lifelong goal of murdering whomever was behind the TVA and causing her to spend a lifetime on the run. Now, to paraphrase He Who Remains, Loki was actually changed by the journey he was on, but Sylvie wasn't quite at the end of her journey yet. That's why after their kiss, she shoved Loki through that time door. Now, obviously, she's still in possession of a tempad, or a literal Kang watch, as so many of you delightfully pointed out in the comments last episode, but theoretically, she could go anywhere at any time as well. Seeing how she'll react to full-on multiversal war and deciding whether she can actually handle an I told you so from Loki is going to be an important part of season 2. And while I don't expect to see them reunited right away, we will almost definitely follow Loki and Sylvie through parallel realities as they work to undo the damage they've done and potentially reunite in the process. But next up, let's talk about another mysterious character departure. Where did Ravonna Renslayer go? After dunking on Mobius in her office, she told her former favorite analyst that she was going off to find free will. Now, to me, this signals that she's evolving into her more assertive, conniving, and deadly comic book counterpart, the Terminatrix, the most 90s of all comic book names. And as we've mentioned previously, in this alter ego, she rocks a suit of power armor, can shapeshift to disguise herself, she brainwashed the Avengers, even pretended to be Nebula, pretending to be a Kang variant so she could infiltrate the Council of Cross-Time Kangs. She's sneaky. In short, she might just be the biggest wild card in the MCU right now and could play a major part in the upcoming multiverse stories ranging from Ant-Man Quantumania to Loki Season 2, but again, only time will tell. But perhaps the biggest question I have, though, is what's Miss Minute's endgame here? Hello! She was clearly programmed to serve at He Who Remains' beck and call, but does that mean she will serve whichever Kang is closest? Is she gonna go rogue in Season 2? Well, as confirmed by director Kate Herron in an interview with Marvel.com, Miss Minutes almost had a fight scene in Season 1. After all, she is a clock. Throwing hands is basically her whole MO in life, so it makes sense. And considering her increasingly sinister demeanor as the season went on, and the MCU's tendency for AI to go haywire, I could see her being a major player in Season 2 in a seriously scary way. Hello! And speaking of time, let's talk about the actual biggest question here. When will Season 2 actually come out? Well, thankfully, the premise of Loki and the events of Season 1 mean it could theoretically take place at any point in the MCU's timeline. And with that said, I have a feeling it's going to debut sometime between Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That means Season 2 would come out sometime between mid to late 2022.
What?
But also, it could easily serve as a capstone for the events of Quantumania, which feature Kang very heavily, so that means we might have to wait until 2023 to see what the past, present, and future hold for our Gods of Mischief. And last but not least, we have what is truly the biggest, most important question of all. Will Mobius actually get to ride his jet ski in Season 2? Yes, he will. I refuse to entertain the idea for one single nanosecond that he won't, because come on, it would be so cool.
It'd be really fun.
And there you have it, folks. Those are our biggest questions for Loki Season 2. And for some of them, we understand we're not gonna have answers anytime soon, but for others, well, we've got some theories. I know, you're surprised to hear that. And we'll share those theories with you on Nerdist in the days and weeks ahead. But in the meantime, though, tell us, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen in Loki Season 2? What are your biggest questions for Season 2?
I know how everything is going to go.
Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.